guys, how's it going? It's Al. I've got your week 14 fantasy football running back rankings, the RB1s and RB2s for the week, my top 24 to try and help you with your start sit questions in this, the final week of the fantasy football regular season. I really hope that you made your playoffs. I hope that maybe I helped in some little sort of a way along the way, whether it was during draft season here on the Fantasy Football channel, whether it was with these rankings videos helping you make decisions, or if you're a member of our Discord interacting with some of the other members in the Smiz gang that have helped you get along your way and win your fantasy league, or help you win your fantasy league. So let's take a look at the top 24 running backs as I see it for this week. Let's go.
He's a legend.
The Week 14 Smiz Gang Listener League is posted. It's $10 as always. It is absolutely no rake and the best tournament on DraftKings as always. Also, it's not available in the lobby. You have to go to smizzle.tv/links to find the link to the league. That is where you have to go to get it. And there are links to absolutely everything else that I do. The main channel, the Discord, the Listener League, everything else, all my socials. So go to that link tree and find it at smizzle.tv/links and make sure that you get in the Listener League today. We've got to fill it, otherwise they're going to make it smaller next week. So as I see it this week, I kind of feel like the top four are very academic. Number one, Austin Ekeler. You know him, you love him, you know that he catches a ton of footballs, and that's perfect for PPR scoring, which is particularly what I rank for. Now, obviously, we need him to score touchdowns, something he's done 12 times so far this year. Did not score one last week and had a pretty mediocre run-of-the-mill week for him with 14.2 fantasy points. He's averaging 22.8. He's still the the running back number one on the week. Number two, Josh Jacobs. He's the number one running back on the year, but has a little bit of a tougher game going up against the Rams. I don't know if they're tough anymore at all. He's going to get his. They're favored in this game on Thursday Night Football. I kind of believe that Austin Ekeler is the better play at this point, even though Josh Jacobs has done a lot better than him, specifically scoring 22 points per game over the last 4 weeks. This could be a week where he scores a little bit less going against the Rams defense, even though it's not the same Rams defense because Aaron Donald's not in there. Just feels like one of those low scoring weeks where they don't have to throttle up. I don't think the Rams offense is going to push them at all, which could mean a down week for the Raiders offense in total, which is why I have Jacobs ranked below Austin Ekeler. Number three, Christian McCaffrey. We saw a return to the great Christian McCaffrey usage that we're used to in previous years for Carolina. 27 opportunities. Jimmy G going down in that week with a foot injury kind of leads to much shorter opportunities. They're going to have to run the ball more. They're going to have to check down a lot more and run more plays that are closer to the line of scrimmage, as if they didn't already run a ton of close to the line of scrimmage plays with Purdy under center. So I think we're going to see something very similar in terms of usage. 25 opportunities moving forward for Christian McCaffrey as they have to win games to secure home games in the playoffs. At number four, Derrick Henry going up against Jacksonville and at home. Derrick Henry's been really inefficient the last 4 weeks, and questions are starting to pop up. Is he broken? Is there a problem? The problem is 3 of the last 4 defenses have been very tough. They played at Philadelphia in a game that they got run, against Cincinnati, and against Denver. 3 very tough defenses. Now, Green Bay is a good matchup for opposing running backs. He did have 30 opportunities in that game. I think we're going to see somewhat of a return to the Derrick Henry that we had seen in previous games and not have an average per rush of like 3.1 or down. He's been at 2.7, 2.2, 3.1, 2.8 for the last 4 weeks. And as I said, 3 of those 4 very, very good defenses. What's encouraging is 3 targets in 3 of the last 4, 2 or more in every one of those. They're getting him the ball in screen plays, and he's seen very big plays on those with a 42-yard gain in week 11, 69-yard gain, which is very nice in week 12. So this is a great bounce back week for Derrick Henry. At number 5, give me Rem Stevenson. He's been so good. And 16.7 fantasy points per game, no less than 13.8 in any week since week 4, and he had 20.1 the week before that. So like, he is basically a very consistent 14 to 25 point per game guy, second in the league at running back in receptions and in PPR scoring. That is so very, very valuable. The matchup against Arizona is solid. It is an up-paced game. Arizona is a defense that we can take advantage of, and I have Stevenson ranked ahead of Saquon Barkley who's been really good this year but squares off against Philadelphia. They are at home. He is going to get his usage. It's not like they're going to suddenly give him like 10 touches a game. They have to run the offense through Saquon. 23 opportunities last week for 19.1 fantasy points, averaging 19.3 on the season. Dalvin Cook is my number 7. I feel like I'm consistently higher than the field on Dalvin Cook, and I don't know why the field stays below. Like, Dalvin Cook has been really, really solid. 15.8 fantasy points per game on average. We've seen him have 25 plus point games. The most recent was at Buffalo in week 10, 16.3 last week against a tough New York Jets defense. Now he gets the absolute polar opposite of that. Going to Detroit, weather controlled game. Detroit is an amplifier of all things offensively good. If you do something well on offense, it's going to look even better against Detroit. So if he gets his typical 20 to 25 opportunities in this game, it is extremely likely that he scores a touchdown, probably a touchdown expectancy of like 0.7 in this game for Dalvin Cook, if I'm going off the top of my head for thinking about projections and whatnot. Definitely has a possibility of 100 scrimmage yards. Should see 3, 4, 5 targets in this one. It's just a great spot for Dalvin Cook. I have him at number 7. I'm sure the consensus is like 9 or 10 because it's always 9 or 10 for Dalvin Cook. And I think that they've been wrong all season as he's been really, really solid. Nick Chubb comes in at number 8. Man, I was high on Nick Chubb last week, and good Lord, did Cleveland's offense really disappoint me in that game against the Houston Texans. He should have run for like 397 yards in that game, and they just didn't create any holes for him. Deshaun Watson looked terrible, and now they have to go on the road to play against Cincinnati, who looked very good against the Chiefs last week. Now, divisional matchups are different. We know that. The last time that he faced Cincinnati at home, he ran for 101, scored a touchdown, 28.4 fantasy points in that game. So Nick Chubb is my number 8. He's really, really solid. If you have him, you're playing him, and you're hoping that. The problem is with Nick Chubb is that he's got possibility of getting like 8 points or 28 points. And it's very rarely in between. Either runs for 100 and touchdown or 2, or he runs for like 80 yards and no touchdowns, because there's no floor. No consistent mid-teens floor because of his lack of usage in the passing game and the fact that he plays like 60 to 65% of the running back snaps and touches because of the presence of one Kareem Hunt. Travis Etienne, there was a rumor that like he was hurt last week. He was going to be limited last week. They were going to throttle him down. Like, he still handled over like 90% of the team's running back snaps and touches. Still had 16 opportunities. They did throw him the ball 3 times. He still only had 8.6 fantasy points as they got kind of run out of the building in Detroit in a really, really good matchup. This week he plays against Tennessee. It is a tougher matchup for running backs. They are very exploitable through the air, and hopefully they throw the ball to him more consistently in this game. Tony Pollard plays in here for me at number 10. Now, this is a weird spot for me because I am of the belief, and have been for multiple seasons now, that Tony Pollard is the better running back on the Dallas Cowboys. He is the RB1. They don't treat him like the RB1, even in the presence of Ezekiel Elliott missing the first quarter based on some sort of, disciplinary reasons. Even with that last week, Ezekiel Elliott played 53.8% of the snaps and 54.1% of the running back touches, where Tony Pollard only got 43.1% of the snaps and handled 37.8% of the running back touches for the Cowboys. The difference is Tony Pollard had more fantasy points because Tony Pollard is a chunk yard machine. He has more scoot plays. And by scoot plays, I mean, man, did you see that boy scoot down the sideline? That kid is quick. That is basically what Tony Pollard brings to the table against the best matchup for opponents. The Houston's just so bad. They're favored by 16 are the Cowboys in this one, with the highest team total on the week at 31. So both running backs are very playable this week. If you have both on your team, like starting both, one in running back, one in flex, is probably in play here. The problem is that it's going to be hard for either one to get to like 30 fantasy points without multiple big plays from both, which could happen, more likely for Tony Pollard to break off a really big play. He had a 30-yard run last week, scored 2 touchdowns, caught 2 balls. He had, in the games where Ezekiel Elliott was gone, he was posting monster games, 39.9, 24.8, 36.7 in the weeks that Zeke was out. With Zeke back, they're just going to kind of split. It's very possible that between the two of them, they get something like 35 touches this week based on how this game could flow in script. I have Pollard higher because I think Pollard has a much higher ceiling, even though a lower floor of touches. So that's how I see it. If you want to flip them, go ahead. Miles Sanders comes in right behind him. Miles Sanders has been very, very good after an entire summer of people telling us how bad he was. He did an interview about saying, don't draft me in fantasy. You should have drafted him in fantasy. 77 rush yards per game, 14.7 points per game. On a team that's always playing from ahead. They do go on the road here to face the New York Giants, and they're favored by 7 in this one. Yes, it is a 3-headed monster at running back with Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott. Yes, there is a quarterback who potentially runs the ball a lot as well, but 9 touchdowns on the year for Miles Sanders, coming off of a year where he had 0 touchdowns. So that's an increase percentage-wise of infinity more touchdowns in 2022 for Miles Sanders versus what he had in 2021. Ezekiel Elliott fills in that number 12 spot to round out the RB1s, as I already kind of gave my analysis of him with Tony Pollard. He does get more inside the 5 touches. So of all the rushing touchdowns that the Dallas Cowboys get, you have a 2-to-1 expectancy that if they get a goal to go situation, that Ezekiel Elliott is going to be the one converting that into a touchdown. And that keeps him in the top 12 as they have the highest team total on the entire week. At number 13, DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift worked his way back into number 1 running back contention. I don't know how, but he's not quite there yet. He did finally get 20 opportunities again. Hallelujah. Maybe the ankle injury, he felt more spry last week. 14 carries, 6 targets. That's the usage that we want. That's the quote Alvin Kamara usage. 12 to 15 carries, 5 to 10 targets. That's perfect for DeAndre Swift. The problem is Jamal Williams is still going to vulture the inside the 5 carries. Williams had 11 touches last week to Swift's 18 touches. I'm hoping that this is sticky for the rest of the year. It could easily bounce back, and I could look like an absolute fool for ranking him here. He had 13 opportunities the week before, 8 the week before that, 9 the week before that. I'm hoping that this is the usage that's sticky now, and they're using Swift as the RB1, and it's not just a 1-week occurrence. At number 14, Isaiah Pacheco. The kid has just looked really good. He's been very explosive. We even saw him get more usage in the passing game this week, which was the one thing that was missing from his game. He got 2 targets, but 2 is greater than 0, and that was twice as many as he saw in week 12 against the Rams when he had 1. But we know that we're getting steady 15 to 25 touch expectation or opportunity expectation from Isaiah Pacheco. Anybody that is existing in this Chiefs offense is going to be a monster. The 3 weeks since he's been the real number 1 for 4 weeks. It started in week 10 against Jacksonville, where he had 16 carries for 82 yards, 7.2 fantasy points because he fumbled once. Week 11, 13.7. Week 12, 15.6. Week 13, 16.2 in a game that they lost. A running back that's not really utilized in the passing game. They're going to give him his 15 to 22 touch expectation, even though he's only going to play 55-60% of the snaps. It's a very potent offense. Team total of 26 in this one. Naji Harris for Pittsburgh is still a volume machine, and running back is very much a volume position, and we cannot ignore the fact that he definitely gets it. Now, he's squaring off against Baltimore, who I'm going to assume they're going to be without Lamar Jackson. If I'm Lamar Jackson, I'm not playing another game this year. I'm done. Right? You kind of tweaked your knee. You're like, you know what? They didn't give you a lot of contract. They didn't give you the contract that you wanted. They're holding out. They're not really sure. They don't want to pay you. They don't want to give you that security. So why risk it anymore? You had a kind of a scary knee injury. You know what, guys? I'm going to do some treatment. I'll see y'all next summer. I'm done. Which just means that offense is not going to run very efficiently at all with Snoop under center. They will put up points, but they'll be very inefficient. And Harris has been pretty good recently in terms of volume. 10.2 fantasy points last week, 10.9 the week before, 27.6 against Cincinnati, averaging 12.3 on the season. Jeff Wilson Jr. comes in at number 16 for me. I'm totally okay with Jeff Wilson here. The problem is, I've got him in this spot, but last week we saw a shift. I'm betting that Mostert being run as the number 1 late in that game was due to the game situation. Jeff Wilson Jr. only had 1 touch last week against San Francisco. This game against the Chargers is a very, very good matchup because the Chargers just give up like 1,000,000 yards per game on the ground to opposing running backs. There is a possibility for big plays and chunk yards. Jeff Wilson Jr., I think, is going to get 15 plus opportunities in this spot. Good spot for him. And if you think that it's going to be Mostert or news breaks later in the week, we will change that to him. Damien Pierce comes in at 17. It's a good running back in a bad spot team-wise, like on the year. If you've watched any, and definitely a bad spot this week, but again, volume over everything. A game that they got trounced last week, right? Like they were in the game, but they just don't have a good offense because like Kyle Allen's bad. Like we know that he's not a good quarterback. We had like 10 targets for Nico Collins, but none of them are catchable. All of them were prayer yards, not air yards, right? They're nowhere close. So, like he caught like 30% of the targets that were headed his way. Damien Pierce, though, 21 more opportunities. Had 12.5 points. Look good doing it, too. Gets Dallas this week. If you have him, I think you're starting him over the other guys that I have on this list, with the exception of maybe one, but where there's so much up in the air at this point that we just don't know with that one. So I've got Damien Pierce here in this spot on volume, averaging 13.5 fantasy points per week. At 18, Jamal Williams, the aforementioned number 2 guy. The possibility that he's still the number 1 in the highest totaled game of the week, with 53 being the total of that one and no other games over 50. There could be touchdowns falling out of that one. And because the league leader in inside the 5 carries and the league leader in touchdowns, I'm keeping Jamal Williams on the list. Even if he's a secondary guy, there is 2 touchdown upside for Jamal Williams this week. Now, 19 is where it gets kind of sketchy. Samaje Perine's been very, very good. We don't know if Joe Mixon's going to come back. This is why I had trouble ranking them. If Joe Mixon is back and in full, he probably ranks ahead of like DeAndre Swift or definitely ahead of Isaiah Pacheco. He's in that like 11 through 13 range. Not knowing that he's there, Samaje Perine's been very good in his absence, right? Like the philosophy that running back is a replaceable position. 24.5 points against Kansas City, 19.3 against Tennessee, 30.2 against Pittsburgh when he came in for him when Joe Mixon got that concussion. They now face Cleveland. Perine has a good running back matchup in this one, but he's had a really bad success rate on the, like he's not a great running back, right? And there's the separator. You can play him at running back and get really good fantasy points out of him because the volume is going to be good and his usage is going to be solid in the passing game. 7 targets in each of the last 2 games. I don't know that Joe Mixon's not going to be back in this one. Very tough to rank either one. I have him at 19. I'm willing to move up on him, maybe ahead of Jeff Wilson to like 16, but behind, no higher than Naji Harris, because Harris, Pacheco, and Swift stay ahead of him, in my opinion. So not knowing the Joe Mixon injury situation, and we won't know that until Friday or Saturday to see if he clears concussion protocol. He'll probably practice with the team this week, and then they have to run him through tests to see if he's going to play. And if he is going to play, is he going to play in full? There's a lot of question marks up in the air, so I have Perine right here at number 19 currently. Rashad White comes in at number 20. Now, look, Lenny came back and had a good week last week on Monday Night Football for Lenny, but he didn't look real good until like the 4th quarter. Fournette ended up with 17 opportunities, but when it got down and dirty at the end, Rashad White also had 17 opportunities. 8 of them came in the passing game, and he looks really good. 17.9 fantasy points in week 13 against New Orleans, against Cleveland in week 12, 19.9 against Seattle in week 10, had 22 carries, no targets, for 13.5 fantasy points. This is a kid who is tremendous in the passing game. Way more quick and agile and has more big play game-breaking ability at this point than Leonard Fournette does. Fournette kind of a bang and fall running back, right? Like he has this tremendous contact anytime he hits somebody and he falls down. I personally think Rashad White is a better running back at this point. Both are getting similar usage. I would prefer White to him. Latavius Murray comes in right behind at 21. I know that they're like 9-point underdogs in this one. They are playing at home. He is the only guy in town at this point. He is going to get usage, although in a very bad offense. But the matchup is fine. 10.1 points, 10.8 points, 17.2 points since taking over the job. 4 targets in 2 of the last 3 games. Kansas City is a team that plays up in pace for them. Who knows if Denver's going to score any touchdowns in this one. Behind Latavius Murray, I have Zonovan Knight. Bam Knight has played well. And we didn't even know who this dude was 3 weeks ago. But since coming onto the scene and being activated, and whether Michael Carter is playing or Michael Carter is not playing, I don't think that's going to stand in the way. The usage has been tremendous the last 2 weeks. 14 carries in week 12, 15 carries in week 13. 3 targets in week 12, 5 targets in week 13. Now, the difference is those were against Minnesota and Chicago, and the Bills are a much better defense on DVOA, in defense versus position, in all aspects. Buffalo is favored in this game by 9 points. If they are playing from behind, yes, there's a possibility that Carter or Johnson takes more targets, but they are going to try as good as they can in any sort of neutral game script situation to establish Zonovan Knight, and expecting 15 to 20 opportunities out of him here at 22. If you were lucky enough to get him off of waivers, you're in a pretty good spot at this point. Even though the matchup's not great, he qualifies for me as a low-end RB2. Love the usage, don't really like the matchup, but it's going to be hard for him not to put up like 9 to 15 fantasy points if the usage stays similar to what it's been. I still have Devin Singletary in this spot ahead of Cook, the rookie. Now, if you don't believe that Buffalo is going to stick with Devin Singletary, and you think that they're going to shift everything late in the season to go to the rookie Cook, 15 opportunities for Singletary last week. James Cook had 20 opportunities last week. That comes off of 7 the week before, 12 the week before that. The difference is, aside from last week where he finally saw an extended snap count in that game, James Cook has not really played more than 15 to 19 snaps in any game this year. This could be a paradigm shift. They could just be shifting things for the playoffs. We know what we have with Singletary, and the ceiling isn't really there. And we want to get the more big playability from James Cook and what he brings to the table, both in the passing game and maybe on the ground. The Buffalo Bills don't have any really great on-the-ground establish it running backs. And it's very possible that they're switching to James Cook in this situation. I'm personally not buying it. I think it's a one-game anomaly. I think that Devin Singletary still holds on to the 60-65% role in this offense, squaring off against the Jets. We'll see if I'm right or if I'm wrong this weekend. That's the way that I have it, and I have him still here at number 23. James Cook comes in just below at like 27 or 28 for me. And rounding out my top 24 in a terrible matchup, an absolutely terrible matchup. New England is the number 1 run stuffer, the number 1 we don't play running backs against this season. They play very slow. They do a good job at stopping efficiency, but James Conner is my RB24 because volume over everything. 25 fantasy points, 13.4, 23.6 the last 3 weeks, playing 90 to 95+% of the snaps and getting that much of the touch percentage at running back as well for Arizona. If he is in the game that much, he is going to pile up opportunities. And if you're telling me that even against a really tough defense, they are favored in this, no, they're not favored in this game. I had it wrong. The Patriots are favored by 1.5. The game is in Arizona. If they play this game and give him 25 opportunities, it's going to be very hard for James Conner to score less than 12 or 13 fantasy points. He's got 4 touchdowns over the last 3 games, 1 of them through the air, 3 on the ground. The usage is everything that we're looking for in this one, even though the efficiency is probably going to take a hit. So good luck to you in the final week of the regular season. All of our rankings videos are going to move to shorts for the playoff weeks. I wish you guys the best of luck. Hope that you make your playoffs. Look out for another video right there.
He's a legend.